Today's Explainer. Today, we're unpacking what, on paper anyway, looks like a totally skippable Group D finale of the 2026 World Cup. We're talking about the paradox of the dead rubber match between the USMNT and Turkey. Picture this, over 70,000 fans packed into SoFi Stadium in LA. The group standings already locked in. This was supposed to be a quiet, kind of meaningless kick-around. But instead, it turned into an absolute 5-goal thriller that had literally everyone on the edge of their seats right down to the final whistle. Okay, let's dive into this. Why on earth did a meaningless match produce the most thrilling 98 minutes of the World Cup so far? I mean, it's the ultimate paradox of tournament soccer. You have two teams with absolutely zero on the line mathematically, yet they're out there in Los Angeles fighting tooth and nail. It was wild. But to really grasp how this happened, we've got to look at the mental states of both locker rooms walking out of that tunnel. On the left side of the equation, you've got the USA. They'd already locked up Group D, right? They beat Paraguay, took down Australia, secured their spot as group winners, so their entire focus was understandably shifting toward the knockout rounds. They're looking at the horizon. But then you contrast that with Türkiye. They were walking into this match already eliminated after two totally agonizing losses. And what's worse, they had taken 62 shots over those two games without scoring a single goal. Not one. So for Turkey, this wasn't about advancing anymore. This was a desperate, fiery fight to salvage the national pride on the global stage. Which brings us to part one, the dead rubber that actually delivered. Look, when you put a team thinking about next week up against a team playing for their absolute pride today, chaos ensues. Let's just walk through this incredible roller coaster of a timeline, because the madness started almost instantly. Third minute, Celtic FC center back Austin Trusty scores his first ever international goal with this beautiful two-touch finish off a corner. Boom. The U.S. looked like they might just cruise again, but Turkey, no way. They struck back fast. Real Madrid's Arda Güler equalized clinically in the 10th minute, and then Barış Alper Yilmaz capitalized on some defensive confusion to put Türkiye up 2-1 by minute 31. The U.S. adjusted halftime, and boom, it pays off instantly when Sebastian Berhalter blasts a thunderous half-volley equalizer in the 49th. Just an absolute rocket. It was this relentless end-to-end frenzy that finally culminated in a crushing 98th minute winner from Kaan Ayhan. So how did we get that specific matchup on the pitch? Well, let's talk about part two, Pochettino's roster roulette gamble. 10. Just let that sink in for a second. That is the staggering number of changes Mauricio Pochettino made to his starting 11 from the previous match. I mean, think about the huge risk and the potential reward of that kind of massive squad rotation in the middle of a World Cup. He essentially benched key players like Tyler Adams, Valerian Balogun, and Antonee Robinson specifically to protect them from getting yellow cards ahead of the knockouts. Actually, scratch that. Of the entire regular squad, only Weston McKennie and Ricardo Pepi carried over as starters. So how did the locker room feel about this massive shakeup? Well, Weston McKennie summed it up perfectly after the game. He said all 26 players we have on this roster can step up and do the job. We believe in everyone on this roster. And you know, that just shows a deeply unified mentality. It really highlights the absolutely crucial importance of trusting your bench depth. If you're going to make a deep World Cup run, you have to know that your reserves can hold their own. The million-dollar question, though, did that depth actually deliver? Well, despite the final scoreline, those fringe players stepped up in a massive way. We mentioned Austin Trusty earlier, making only his second start, and he grabs a phenomenal set-piece goal right out of the gate. Then you've got Sebastian Berhalter, who played most of the game carrying a yellow card, stepping up and hitting that absolute rocket for the second-half equalizer. These guys got incredibly valuable minutes against a highly motivated, full-strength European opponent. So yeah, for sure, they proved the USA's depth is the real deal. All right, moving on to part three, the Arda Güler show. Because look, there were two teams on that pitch, and we absolutely have to talk about the sheer dominance of the Turkish prodigy. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the 21-year-old Real Madrid playmaker just dictated the entire flow of the game. He didn't just score that clinical goal in the 10th minute. He completed 41 out of 46 passes, made 2 key passes, created a big chance, and won 6 out of 8 duels. I mean, the kid was basically sauntering around the pitch, pulling the strings and creating chances like it was nothing. And it wasn't just the stat sheet that caught this. The fans definitely noticed too. Let's do a quick Reddit reality check. One user on the Real Madrid subreddit pointed out, Coach Montella gave Arda a lot of freedom on the pitch. His quality was obvious. Even in a disjointed team performance, he stood out. I think that hits the nail on the head, right? It perfectly captures how the digital fan base reacted to his masterclass. He wasn't tied down to one spot. They essentially tossed him the keys to the offense, and he drove it brilliantly. Which leads us to part 4, stoppage time heartbreak.
Let's set the scene here. We are deep into 7 minutes of stoppage time. The score is deadlocked at 2-2, and the clock ticked past the 98-minute mark. Here's exactly how the chaos unfolded. First, Arda Güler slips this devastating nutmeg pass right through Christian Pulisic. Second, in the wild scramble that follows, the ball somehow sneaks under USA keeper Matt Turner, with defender Alex Freeman getting just a tiny piece of it. And third, right there waiting, is 31-year-old veteran defender Kaan Ayhan to stab the ball home. Literally, with one of the very last kicks of the entire game, Turkey secures this massive pride-saving victory, handing the USMNT their first loss of the tournament. Okay, let's wrap this up with part 5, Eyes on the Knockouts. Look, losing like that in the 98th minute, it stinks. There's no doubt about it. But we really need to look for the silver lining here. In tournament soccer, finding the strategic advantage hidden within a short-term failure is absolutely vital. Losing a battle to win the war is a hallmark of elite international management. Believe me, Pochettino knew exactly what he was doing. And here's why the USMNT is actually in an incredibly strong position moving forward. Because they rotated so heavily, they walk away with 0 yellow card suspensions for their star players. None. Crucial starters are fully rested. The bench just gained a vital World Cup experience that can be a total game changer if fatigue or injury pop up later on. But honestly, the biggest victory of the night might just be that Christian Pulisic's return to the pitch in the 58th minute from that calf injury. He looked sharp, he was energetic, and he even forced a crazy save that pushed the ball onto the post. And all of that strategy points to this exact moment. Next up, a round of 32 clash against Bosnia and Herzegovina on July 1st up in the San Francisco Bay Area. With a rested squad, 0 key suspensions hanging over their heads, and a healthy, hungry Christian Pulisic back in action, the United States is primed for a really deep run. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on as we wrap up today's explainer. In tournament football, is a strategic loss with a heavily rotated squad actually a bigger win than a meaningless victory? It's like this giant, complex chess match of World Cup management, and it really forces us to rethink how we define success on the pitch. Keep that in mind as we head into the knockout rounds. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating match, and keep your eyes peeled for what happens next.